Well, we are learning a little bit more about the four suspected terrorists accused of planning to bomb synagogues and shoot down military jets in New York City. Investigators say that James Cremati, David Williams, Anta Williams, and Laguerre Payan were intent on jihad when they were arrested in front of a building that police say they were planning to bomb. New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg commending the police work that brought those plans to a halt.
I feel safer today in this city than ever before. I think our first responders, most importantly, are the first preventers, and that's exactly what you would want.
All four of these men spent some time in prison. They converted to Islam. It is unclear, as Judith Miller points out to me, whether they converted to radical Islam while they were in prison. We're looking at a very different site here. This is the Annapolis graduation that we were watching earlier today. That's where the president's been today. And we know that his plan to potentially, that may include bringing some Gitmo detainees here to the United States, has the possibility of increasing the recruitment of homegrown terrorists. That's the concern that some people have right now. So let's bring our panel and talk about this after we look at that nice scene from Annapolis today. Waleed Phares is a Fox terrorism and foreign affairs analyst, and he's the author of The Confrontation, Winning the War Against Future Jihad. Judith Miller is a Fox News contributor. She's covered terrorism in great length for many years. Judith, are you concerned that this is, for a long time we've heard that the next wave is sort of a homegrown terrorist cultivated here on U.S. soil. Does this increase your concern about that?
Well, I think I've always been concerned since 2007 when the NYPD issued a very controversial report, 90 pages, saying, the problem is not in Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan. The problem is also here. We've got to look at homegrown. And at that point, the intelligence community of the United States said, no, it's really Afghanistan, Pakistan. The homegrown phenomenon is very poorly understood, but I think the record's beginning to show that it's something you just must pay attention to.
And, is it too much of a leap, or does it make sense to you to be concerned that if Guantanamo Bay detainees end up in U.S. prisons, some of these lower-level detainees, that they might end up in the prison population, and that their sort of badge of courage of having been at Gitmo might inspire this homegrown terrorism?
I think that is a concern. I think prisons, as a rule, are a place you worry about. You've got a bunch of people who are dangerous. They are there because they violated the law. You put them in a situation where you take all of the things they know away from them, and yes, they can be swayed by someone. On the other hand, American law enforcement ain't stupid, and they have been paying a lot more attention lately to who's giving the lectures, who's really standing in as the imams in prison. And I think certainly in the prisons that I've looked at, the people who are preaching a nonviolent, mainstream form of Islam. So to me, the question about the Newburgh plot is, where did these guys meet each other? How were they radicalized? We know they were converted in jail, but how were they really radicalized, and how did they get the idea to blow up 2 synagogues and to start shooting Stinger missiles at an airfield?
Yeah, let's go to Waleed Phares. Thank you, Judith. Waleed, what are your thoughts on this in terms of the concerns of homegrown terror, and it's all brought to our, to the forefront based on this plot, this Newburgh plot?
Absolutely. If you look at the case of Cremati, the 2 Williams, and Payan, what is common to all of them, of course, is the criminal background, but that is not what made them into potential terrorists. The other thing which was common is the fact that they have been converted in jail, the 4 of them, and again, they all ended up with one ideology. So now the missing link is who in jail, who after jail, what kind of mechanism, what kind of madrasa is out there, which is radicalizing them, and more important than that, designated targets. I mean, to designate 2 synagogues, bringing down an airplane, talking about jihad. This is not, a personal research of each one of these people. There is a force behind that, a virtual force behind that, which is directing them. And we've seen this in different cases. The Oregon 6, the Miami group, and of course the Virginia paintball gang as well.
So you're suggesting that there's a higher form of local network that is organizing people like this?
Organizing would be too big of a word. I would say inspiring. We had a case in Idaho where internet has been very important. These guys may not go on internet, but we need to look forward and further into what kind of organization is directing them slowly towards these kind of activities.
Judith, you both suggested in what you said, though, that it didn't just come from these 4 guys.
No,
so
it didn't.
Where did it come from?
Well, that's what we don't know. Right. But one thing you have to look at, and that is the role of the confidential witness, as they call him, or the informant.
Right.
Did he give them this idea? Were they the ones who chose the targets? We know that he supplied the mock explosives and the mock missile, thank goodness. But what was his role? And of course, any defense attorney is going to say, my guys
they
are
would never have done this if it weren't for the
innocent.
informant.
Right.
But in this case, they let them go far enough in this plot to actually get to the point where they were planning where they were going to put these bombs around the synagogue, and they're, the shakedown in all of this is being credited with letting them go that far for prosecution purposes.
Yes,
right?
And this is new precisely because prosecutors are increasingly concerned as we get away from 9/11 about how difficult it's going to be to get juries to believe that these people would have done something like this on their own. So they let this plot go on, knowing that the explosives wouldn't go off and that the stinger wouldn't shoot anything down. I think they had this plot very well in hand, but look at how quickly it unfolded. They really chose the targets in December. That means within 6 months, this plot was off and running in a very serious way. That doesn't give you a lot of time to do an investigation. Surveillance has to be there on the scene, which is why the FBI and the NYPD talk about the importance of undercovers and having them in place.
Yeah, it is. It's fascinating, and you guys have fantastic insight into it. So thank you, Judith, very much for being with us today. Waleed Farah, always a pleasure to have your thoughts on this. Thank you, sir. Trace?